Today is the 15th of October as I shoot this video, and it's a sad day, somewhat sad day for Kenya. One, it's because we've lost Raila Odinga. He's been a key opposition leader for the longest. When I say for the longest, I mean since I can remember myself. That's the only opposition leader I can even remember. The other guy we've lost is Kimani Mbogwa. That guy was a fighter and he's fought. Those are the type of stories where we don't say that he fought a good fight. I don't know. Because the goodness of his fight was filled with a lot of struggle, and sometimes you wonder, do some people do not deserve some of the things they go through, but then again, that's life. Anyway, none of us are getting out of here alive. But anyway, on today's anyways, on today's podcast, we're looking at the life and the great life of, or the political life, because of course I do not know if there is any other life that is out there, of his right retired excellency Raila Amolo Odinga. Right? Hi, I'm Mumbai and welcome to the Shift podcast. So Raila Odinga has been one of the most powerful politicians in this country, from his detention by a previous president and also another contested election with also another previous president. If you ask me, his whole life, I mean his documented life, the ones that his political life. I don't want to talk about his other life, either economical, personal. I don't know about that. I know about his political life. That is what we knew. So his life was contesting for his presidential power. But nonetheless, according to sources, that is the national broadcasters, Raila died in India from a heart attack while seeking medical attention. Well, it's one thing for one of the strongest Kenyan politicians, one of the people who have held political power for so long, to go to another country to seek medical attention. But then again, that's not why we are here. We're just going to look at his impeccable political career. So, Raila was born in Maseno in 1945 on 7th January. And then after that, also before we continue, we know that he's a Nepo baby. By a Nepo baby, I mean that he was born into politics. His father, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, was also in politics alongside Kenyatta well after the end of colonization. But then again, it's debatable if colonization ever end. But we are not here for that. We are here for, again, we continue. And he went to school for mechanical engineering in Germany. So I guess those stories we always hear every time when they say that he was one of the people who engineered the I have no facts on this, by the way. I'm just going by rumors. He was one of the people who engineered the bypass. You see the bypass roads that were started by Kibaki. We can say he was among the first one because he has an engineering degree from East Germany, a master's in science from East Germany. And after that, he's been a lecturer, he's been an engineer, and he's also had several roles in places like the Kenya Bureau of Standard, etc. Now, his political career started well after the death of his father, and that was in the 70s and in the 80s. You see, this man has lived, by the way. 80 years is no mean feat for anybody. In the 70s and the 80s, he opposed the one-party rule, and that is in the 80s, the one-party rule by Daniel Arap Moi. I did another previous video where I started to touch on the political lineage or the political environment of Kenya since 1992. I did not see it fit to start way back, but after the death of the first president, that is Jomo Kenyatta, the then deputy president took over power. And while he was in power, there was only one political party, and that was KANU. And then in the 80s and in the 70s, Raila saw it not fit for us to only have one political party. So he opposed the one political party, and that is the start of his political career. And then after that, because Moi was running a dictatorship, I don't think that is a secret. And if it is a secret, I will add the word allegedly here. So if it is a secret, he was imprisoned without a trial in 1982, and he was charged with treason. And that was the after attempted coup, yes, in the 1980s. So they attempted to take over power from from Moi, right? Yes, from Moi. And it failed, and then he was detained. And there are so many stories about his torture and everything, and why he's been fighting for, like, the what has he been fighting for? Because it is not independence. The thing that you should be fighting for is for better standards of living of your people. But again, debatable. But he did. He was one of the best political leaders in this country. So later, after being imprisoned for that long, he was exiled into Norway, where he sought asylum, and he used to seek asylum in the European countries. And then after that, he led a lot of resistance for multipartyism, and that was in the early 90s. He was one of the key players in the early 90s for Kenya to have a multi-party system, which was a one-party system back then. So since 1992, when the multi-partyism started, he has been the member of parliament of Langata. I think by most of us I mean millennials. I don't know Gen Zs. Gen Zs are mostly, they are aware of the county government, like the devolved government. But for us millennials, we really remember the MP system. So he's been the MP for Langata constituency for so long. Since I think since then, and until the devolution, the devolution government started in 20, was it? I'm not sure. 2025. I'm not too sure. I will confirm that. So after that, he became the Minister of Energy, which is apparent because, of course, he's an engineer from 2001 to 2002. So he was a Minister of Engineer. So that is from 1992 onwards. He's been a member of parliament until 2007, where he ran for presidency. So in between the 2000s and 2007, he held a couple of ministerial roles. And the one thing that I think back then, it's not like now, the ministerial roles were very political. So it depended on which political say. Well, it's the same as here, only that the constitution actually stipulates that you have to have some knowledge of whatever, what do you call it, whatever ministry you are serving. So he held a couple of them. He was the Minister of Roads, Public Works, Housing, from 2003 to 2005, right? And then in 2007, he ran for presidency against Moi Kibaki. Yes, he ran for presidency against Moi Kibaki, and that is when we had the worst post-election violence. Almost started a civil war in Kenya, and that is when we saw the highest number of independent displaced people in this country. No, not independent. What do you mean? Like the displaced people in this country. What's the name? Internally displaced people, because there were no refugees. So in 2007, that is when he became the prime minister of this country. That was after a lot of talks, because the story goes, and I'm going to give a quite rough overview because there is so much that goes into that, because I can remember it. The story goes is he was vying for presidency against Moi Kibaki, but he lost to Moi Kibaki. But the story is that he had actually won, but the what do you call it? The government in power could not lose hands, because we're in Africa, of course. So he lost, and then him losing led to us having the worst post-election violence. And thanks to that, we had the peace talks, and because of that, while he lost the presidency, he became our prime minister thanks to the peace talks. Make sense? Yes. So after that, or even in between that, he has led the opposition for, even when he's in government, he has wanted to be president even in a previous election. Now, after that, after Kibaki, he later ran again against Uhuru. He has ran against Ruto. He has tried to become president in this country for around 5 times. And for all those 5 times, he has contested the results. So it's quite sad actually when I think about it, because you can does it mean that you can live your life fighting for something? And this man actually fought for this thing for so long, fought for the Kenyan presidency for so long. You can fight for the Kenyan presidency for so long and never get it. Other than the fighting for presidency, he's also led things like the constitutional reforms, especially the 2010 constitutional reforms. He was a big influence in us adopting the new constitution. And I think a lot of us do not understand. Other than the devolution, the 2010 constitution came with a lot of perks for us Kenyans. And it carries the perks only if it's followed. And we all know that there are people who do not want to follow it. But then again, he has also faced a lot of criticism. Among those, the major criticism that Raila has faced all his life is forming alliances rather than fighting for the people. But by alliances, I mean the way we call them handshakes, right? So we call them handshakes. So this is what I mean. He vies for a presidency. I think for every presidency he's vied, he has become part of the government one way or the other. So he vies for presidency and he loses. And if he loses, he will form an alliance with the sitting government, either a lot of agitation from now the opposition, or he will also he would also just broker deals with the sitting government for him to join the sitting government. Because thing is, if you join the sitting government and you are supposed to be the opposition, it means that you no longer have the opposition. That is among the major criticism that he has faced throughout his career, and most recently was the criticism by the youth, especially during the June last year in 2024. We had the Gen Z protest, and he said to have betrayed the youth because of forming an alliance with the sitting government again, so that now the violence against the people will continue. Not only will the violence continue, then the people will not have anyone to talk for them, like in front now of the current president. But other than that, he's left a legacy, a huge legacy of grassroots mobilization in this country. I do not think there is any other politician today, alive today, that has had the followership that Raila Odinga has had over the years. He had the most, for lack of a better word, cultic following through everywhere. In Nairobi, outside Nairobi, everywhere you go, you will never lack somebody who like the guy. And the thing is, you cannot even point one thing that he ever did for them. People just liked him. He's known for his mobilization tactics and the way he knows how to bring people together, and especially the marginalization of the marginalized communities, and even people who are seen not to also not to fit in the current, maybe how can you put, in the current society, especially the political society. And on top of that, he's the one person who maybe has some proteges, the people who follow him religiously. It might have softened over the recent years, but we can blame that because he didn't have the same political muscle he's had before. Not only the political muscle, you can even blame it on his health and capabilities. But other than that, Raila Odinga has been a force to reckon in this country politically. And with that, I pass my sincere condolences to the family and friends of Raila Amolo Odinga, and not forgetting Kimani Mbogwa. That's it for today. Short and sweet. Bye. See you on the next one. And also share, like, subscribe. And if you're listening on Spotify, you can also follow and download. And also leave a comment. Leave a comment. I really want to be very, very consistent with the content. So, yeah. Thank you. Bye.